if the rooted and radical baseline itself is under threat, the basis of our basis is no longer the baseline. It's no longer the rock upon which we thought we had built our ideas. Then not only do our economics need to be discarded, but also possibly our politics. I think in this age, the age we're about to enter into, I think we've rapidly moved into a sort of postmodern era in regard to the West, the downgoing of the West, and the notions of left and right and social and labour and capital are highly discardable. They're completely obsolete. Even the postmodern terms of globalism and ecology are also obsolete, rapidly become obsolete in the face of a massive disaster that's about to befall us. As I said in the open letter to the New Zealand Prime Minister, what is under threat is for a small country, 4 billion people, over 70 years, the next 70 years, is $23 trillion. Or $17 trillion if you want to be conservative about it. That is a lot of money. Not only is that future potential money under threat, we shall no longer put our hands on it, but the money that over that next 70 years that would otherwise belong to us becomes under threat. If you don't grow, you can't grow. If you diminish or pull back, then the pulls back, if you like. It's not proportionate, it's disproportionate. It will accelerate into a collapse. That is why I'm predicting a collapse. I think we do not have the political will. It is just too deep and too complicated. The notion of actually having to discard Parliament and democracy, for instance, for an emergency government, to actually govern New Zealand as an entity and not have it break down into regions and ungovernable entities. The Prime Minister and so on doesn't appear to be aware of the crisis that we're facing at all. He smiles and he thinks he's being clever, cutting and slicing and selling off what the press still call the crown jewels, and it's just all so pathetic in the face of it. We have a $35 billion loan arrangement that we'll have to pay back, and if we're going down, that will loom larger and larger. It may be very, very, very difficult to pay that back, and so 35 billion in the face of 23 trillion or $17 trillion lost over 70 years, through population economics. Now that is the basis for all these remarks. We're continuing to talk about the limits to taxation in the current environment, and we must rapidly deploy new strategies and new understandings, because it's not going to work. It is not currently working, and is beginning to show. When you look at the economics with all its mathematics and diagrams and equations and so on and so forth, what people do not realise is that it's built on a static concept of economics. People say, we're rich and, we have very few children. So therefore, if you have very few children, you'll become rich. So that's a static concept, a coincidental concept. This is very shallow thinking and a huge error. But this is the error we have made. All our thinkers have made this error, all of them. I mean, there's none that have not made this error. And they lean heavily on Malthus, even though Malthus, through Paul Ehrlich and his predictions, have been proven to be totally 100% wrong. And we still lean on something that we know to be wrong. And this coincident, very shallow thinking. See, what has created the wealth is that huge period of population that we had before, the profile, the skirted profile that we had before, which Brazil and Southeast Asia and China and India have had, leading to the wealth they have today. To run a one-child policy systematically, you need computer systems and accurate tracking of people, because the Chinese people were playing, whereas the peanut, the shell game, and they were just moving the children around. They were having more than one children. But with computer systems, so it's only in the last 10, 15 years and so on that the Chinese one-child policy has actually been effective. And that policy in India was never, still today, is probably not effective. It's just a guess what the actual population of China and India actually is. There's probably tens of millions of Chinese people unreported as having been born or existed, but they'll have to be given papers or acquired papers as they reach adulthood. And of course they have a huge hinterland population, that huge bulk, just the sheer mass of the population, to continue to sell into, even if it had been static, which we do not have. We do not have large populations. We're right up to here with all our economic strategies. And, like the credit card is maxed out, the economic card is maxed out, derivatives and printing of money is a first-class sign of that. Now, the old perception was that 10-to-1 money, the fractional reserve banking money, was costless and there was no downside. That I have shown, I believe, or even just to suggest it will get you thinking, you will see that that is not so. It builds up a habit of credit, and prices gradually rise to meet that thing. So everybody's paying 10 times more than they ought to, and the parity is matched. The money available, encourages the price to grow. So it's inflationary, you see. And so the value of the currency is in fact diminished. Its purchasing power is no greater than if they just issued $1 for $1. Ironic. But, there's that period where there's a game, or a seeming game. But the downside is, over the long term, over 100 years, 200 years, 150 years or whatever, the culture, the society becomes accustomed to this kind of credit availability and the concept of money growing on trees and being created with the stroke of a pen and special drawing rights and all that kind of stuff. So then we think it's safe to have derivatives, 500-to-1 money, and even then tempted at this late stage. And of course we've only had 500-to-1 money really in sort of hyper credit arrangements, the 80s, 90s, the noughties. But it has given us a habit for not 500-to-1 money, not 5,000-to-1 money, but what I call topless money, which amuses my friends when I call it topless money. It's money without a top to it. You're printing money. But the extent to which you print the money, you are diluting the currency, and you're probably diluting the perception faster than you're diluting the actual, strict proportionate relationship. So the perception, the prestige of the American dollar is accelerating downwards, though the technical value is only threatened by a lesser amount. So it could all turn to custard very rapidly. And I see things as, the tempo of history is speeding up, especially in regard to these matters. Then you have the arguments of, Naomi Klein, for instance, which in one of her books she only dared to put as a nominal notation in a footnote. That corny old idea, as anybody with any brains can consider, that the rich hold, the 1% rich people hold 90% of all the world's wealth. Well, maybe they do, but it's what I call money in play, or it's engaged money, it's committed money, it's digital money. The moment you actually pull it out and you do the physical business of actually trying to physically or otherwise, digitally or otherwise, actually to transfer the money to people, quite apart from the fact that you don't actually do the poor people very much good. The sum involved is about $9,000 or something per person throughout the world. What the poor do with the money is well known from lotteries. They just splurge it and it's useless. It just trickles away. So even if that was physically possible and there was no diminishment of the money, but the nature of the money is that it's in play. The moment you take it out of play, it almost evaporates. It becomes, especially in some of these derivatively derived plays, you would see it would literally evaporate to zero. It's only useful while it's in the game. It's bonded to the game. It's linked to the game, and if it isn't in the game, it disappears. It has no value. Even in the physical realm, it disappears because it's like lottery money, as I said before, which utterly destroys her entire argument and all those arguments, those socialistic arguments, just by thinking about it, just by thought experiment. You don't need equations and so on and so forth, proportions. They all sound very impressive, and they try and sound technical in that way, but it's a crazy thought. People forget that a house in Africa or a house in a poor country is a house, and a house in a rich country is a house. A house according to that structure. They've got a house and food costs and all the things around them at an equal level of poverty, $2 a day, as themselves. So there's a kind of balance there anyway. And somebody else has got $2 million a day or something like that, but all the values around them. Well, we see it within our society. The rich move within the rich circles, and they don't feel they've had a good meal unless they've paid $1,000 for it. Well, good luck to them. I can eat quite well on a $10 meal, or much less, if I like. I think the current worldview seems to include the idea that America's always been on top, for instance, and that therefore America will always be on top. There's some sort of fixed historical reality to it. But excuse me, America emerged as a world power probably in the Roaring '20s, and its advent in the Second World War. I mean, it was in the First World War, but was not decisive. I don't think it was decisive. But its advent in the Second World War and its Lend-Lease arrangements with Russia, various tanks and military material that they lent on very good terms to Russia, to aid Russia, contributed to the victory on the Russian front. Contributed, I mean, wasn't claiming any more than that. But it's from that time on, which is also very recent. It's less than 100 years ago, 80, 90 years ago. So they've only been top dog as long as Russia itself survived, which was 70 years. And I think it's pretty well follow the same pattern for some of the same reasons, unfortunately. Now there's the perception that government tax always does good, but if you tax the productive economy too much, if you step on their toes there, they can't produce as much, for which you're relying on them for the taxes. So you're killing the goose literally at that point that lays the golden egg, just through taxes. So there's a point at which taxes do become destructive in one generation, in the first generation even that it applies it. As I've said, the idea you can tax the rich to give to the poor. That's a current, static, perennial understanding. Keeps coming back. We need to pay for this. We need to pay this. The government will do this. The government will do that. Hold on. There were times when people didn't so rely on the government. What is the basis for the reliance on this government? The government is actually your money. If I get into trouble, I will rely on your money, my money, placed in the hands of government. But no, in the meantime, the government have wasted that money. They've lined their own pockets with it. We know that. We're seeing quite a bit of that. And the lawyers and the politicians and the hangers-on have all taken advantage of that pool of money. Whenever you provide a pool of money, you attract the vultures who are greedy for it. It doesn't just sit there. There's all kinds of people who have a go at ripping it off. So you hand it over to the biggest thief in town and say, look after this. Don't be surprised if it's diminished when it's returned to you, or he doesn't provide the service he promised. He's kept you on the go for 20 years, and when it comes for your turn to receive, it isn't there. And that's happening right here in New Zealand. The queues for medical treatment are getting longer and longer, and education is somewhat less below par than it used to be. It was somewhat more below par than it used to be, and so on. It's not such a good idea. Having money in the hands of government, having all that control on the hands of government, these people look after each other. They form a tribe all of their own, and hardly any of them are ever sacked. We're discovering in this country a great number of people who've got themselves into jobs in the public service. They have no qualifications whatsoever. They've just marched in and told lies, and they've attained quite high positions. And it's not just one of them. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7. There's a whole string of them. We wonder how many more of them there will be. So if they can't account for their own positions and jobs, if they don't even do that kind of checking when somebody's being paid 50, 60, 70k a year, we give them the responsibility for 10 million, 100 million, $1 billion and so on and so forth. This is madness. They're incompetent. They're proven. Case closed. No, you look after your money, and you'll eyeball the people, and you'll fire them, you'll sue them who mismanage your money. Our governments have mismanaged money for 20, 30, 40 years. They've told us lies just to get themselves elected, so that they can continue to tell yet more lies to us, because they just have to get over the hurdle every 3 years, or every 4 years, or every 2 years, or how often the elections are in your country. And the people who fund this fraud, the oligarchic forces, play one off against the other, and support both, and they want their rewards 10 times more or 100 times more than what they contributed. They're the winners in the whole scene. They don't get their hands dirty. They don't care whether they vote or not. The parties are going to do what they want. and this farce you think is a valuable, prestigious, highly rated, wonderful democracy. It's oligarchic. It's just, you know, it's the democracy is just a smokescreen in front of oligarchic control. It'd be far better to actually have the oligarchic persons and powers and corporate interests openly running the show. At least you'd be able to put a name and a face to the powers that be, you know, that do be, that really are. It's a farce. It's a complete sham. You know, it's fake. It's not freedom. It's they're enslaving you. Half your money, if you're poor or middle income or wealthy, they are taking half your money, approximately. You know, some situations may differ, but across the board it'll be about half your money. Now you can do this for one generation, but we'll see later what happens to that. You know, that somehow capital is opposed to the social state. Hold on, you know, the pool of money is just asking to be capitalised. The workers and businesses are actually on the same side. Whoever said that they were opposed? If the business goes out of business, there's no work. You know, zero result. Who wants that? If the businesses function and make a profit, who cares if it's a big profit or a small profit? As long as they make a profit and are willing to continue to employ people, the workers win, don't they? You know, get on board, sign up for the boardroom and work with. How can you make the whole thing more profitable for your country? There is no opposition between, you know, workers and bosses. They should be on the same team. It's a ridiculous notion. I would never allow it. They would be forced to work together for their own good, mutual benefit. There's this constant and abiding notion that collapses and market reverses and so on somehow arbitrary or sequential, systematic things based on a business cycle rising and falling. Oh, it's just the business cycle, people foolishly reassure themselves. No, we must look at the components underlying it, the components 10 years, 20 years, 30, 40 years or so before, probably 50 years before, leading to now. We do 50-year forecasts. Why don't we do 50-year backcasts to see what's brought about the current circumstances? I think we should do those things, because it's that kind of length of time, the generational types of things, that have brought about all the conditions we see today. Mistakes our governments have made, big mistakes, bad mistakes, incompetent mistakes, criminally incompetent mistakes. You can see where I'm going with that. I'll say no more. That tax increases enlarge our public well-being. Tax increases. So, it's good that you're getting less money. It's good that you're getting less money because you're going to get something from the government. What? The experience is, currently, the more you give to the government, the less service you get. It's about time we gave them the message hard and fast and said, no more. I'm going on strike. I'm not going to pay you so-and-sos anymore. You know, it's over. It's finished. Some laws were obsolete, it's thought. You know, like Magna Carta. It's not.